Happy Pride Month, everyone, and welcome to QT Connect Cafe, where we tell everything about queer and tech. I'm Naufel, co-founder at QueerTech, and your host today. And QueerTech is based in Tehuantepec, Montreal, and we would like to begin by acknowledging that QueerTech is located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kanien'kehá:ka Nation is recognized as the custodians of the land and the waters on which we gather today. As usual, before we dive in, I would like to thank RBC, our presenting sponsor for this QT Connect live stream series. And I also would like to thank Unity Technologies, BDC, Google Chrome, Moment Factory, Sun Life, Oral Health, and Osadia for supporting us making this series happen. Some of you might know that this is a big month for Queer Tech. On June 1st, we officially launched Queer Tech in Toronto, and we're really excited to start hosting events and activities there. Our goal is always to grow our community and to support you to access the tech industry, advance your career in tech, or launch or launch your tech business. And to celebrate our launch in Toronto, we will be hosting our first edition of Pride Hacks Toronto on June 16, 18 next week. So for those who are looking to have a positive impact, you can join us to work on one of the tech issues that the nonprofit submitted to us. You can learn about the project and the skills that we need on queertech.org/pridehacks. Also, for those who are looking to get into tech or advance their career in tech, you can check our talent network, queertech.org/jobs. We have some amazing partners on there that you can connect with. And for those who need support, we are hosting community office hours every Wednesday from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Discord. You can check out our website, queertech.org, to get the link to our QT Discord community. So before we get started with our guest, for those who have any questions or comment throughout the duration of our live stream, you can write your question on the comment box on the social media that you're watching us on. You can also tag anyone that you believe is looking for a career in tech or looking to advance their career, looking for direction, inspiration, and or motivation. And just be aware that we might show your comments on this live stream. And for those who love what we do and want to continue supporting Queer Tech, you can donate on our website, queertech.org. And thank you so much for the support and everyone who's been donating to Queer Tech. So our guest today is AJ Fernandez Rivera. AJ is Managing Director at Accenture, based out of Toronto office. AJ has been with Accenture for more than 20 years and has lived and worked in various Accenture and client locations across Asia, Europe, and North America. She's currently the Product and CMT Canada Technology Sales Lead and the Program Lead for Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation. In addition, AJ is the executive sponsor of Accenture Canada's Pride ERG, the Accenture Canada Technology I&D Lead, and North American co-sponsor for LGBT Leaders Learning L3 course. I'm so excited for this conversation, and we've been partnered with Accenture since last year, so it's really amazing to have AJ join us today. So welcome to the show, AJ. You may reveal yourself. Don't you love that welcome, AJ? Welcome to Connect Cafe. How are you doing?
I am good. Excuse my voice. I have
No
some
problem.
seasonal allergies and just
Yes.
coming up from from sore throat. But happy to be here. It's
Thank
the Pride
you.
Month, and I'm always supportive of what queer tech is doing
Thank you so much.
in the industry. So I'm always supportive now, Phil, of what you and your team are doing. So happy Pride, everyone, and
Happy
glad
Pride.
to be here. Yeah, I was laughing, smiling about the early morning for. I thought I was doing queer tech, not America's Next Top Model with the camera to welcome me. But yes,
Absolutely. That's how we welcome our guests, and really excited for our conversation today.
Me too.
There's so much I want to ask you and we want to talk about. I usually start my pronouns are he and him, and what are your pronouns?
My pronouns is she and her.
Thank you. And so, as usual for this series, we love before we kind of talk about career and development, we really kind of want to learn more about you. And so, tell us a little bit, where did your story begin, and where did you grow up? What did you study? And walk us a little bit through some of your life milestones.
Okay, so if we want to go back to the very beginning, I was born and raised in the Philippines, in central Philippines, in an island called Cebu, CEBU. For those of you who are curious, you can Google it now and look at images of what that island is, and you might probably ask yourself, why is AJ in Canada with all these beautiful beaches in her hometown? But yeah, that's where I grew up. I grew up near the beach, so the beach is always very beautiful for me. I come from a very big family. I have five siblings, so there's six of us in the family, and include my mom and dad, so there's eight. So, and I'm always lucky to have a big family because that was the foundation of how I felt loved, supported, and usual sibling rivalries that you get when you grow up. But I'm always lucky to have a very supportive family, brothers and sisters, and my mom and dad.
Mhm.
Um, and I think growing up, I've always been very, very, call it a voracious appetite to learn. I didn't know what career I was going to end up with. Um, my dad always thought that, oh, maybe if you have a career in showbiz, then you'll be successful. But showbiz was never my
Yeah,
line. And I said, Dad, I don't want to be in showbiz. I knew I wanted to be successful in the corporate world, but I didn't know what. So I studied in the best schools in the Philippines are the Catholic schools.
yeah,
Um, and that's when the conflict of my childhood began because I come from this very close supportive family, and then I go into a Catholic school, and mind you, it was all school for boys.
yeah,
And of course, I was always very feminine already, and it was very noticeable. So I started to see those challenges of
yeah,
what my identity is at home and what my identity is outside of home. And in this case, the social setting are the schools.
yeah,
And the challenge began around, oh, I'm not as accepted at school, especially in Catholic schools with things that are changing. We can talk about another cafe about just religion, but this is not about religion. But
yeah,
I say I am a spiritual being because of that Catholic upbringing.
mhm,
But the religiousness somehow conflicted with my identity. I don't take away what I learned from
yeah,
spirituality because I like to be, introspective and meditative. But yeah, the challenge
absolutely.
started there. What got me through some of them and the normal challenges, I think a lot of people that consider themselves queer always have, you have discrimination, looks, wherein, by mere looks of someone, that they're looking at you differently.
Yeah,
Those happen. And I don't think I would have survived it without my family support. So I went through the motion because I just need, the end in sight is to get a good education because I
yeah,
knew education would be important for me to start. And then I just go back home to feel the security of the family. So I think if I look back, I, in that upbringing, I think I started to understand that the world can be both a safe place
yeah,
and not a safe place.
yeah,
So my survival instincts, and maybe a lot of the LGBT community,
yeah,
it's honed in very early, and you just learn which areas you feel like, oh, this is an unsafe place, and I need to not engage. So
Absolutely. And I talk to a lot of queer people, and I realize that because of those experiences, one of the characteristic we start to develop is resilient, right? A
yeah,
resilience to the environment where we're in, learning how to navigate. Sometimes people have a hard time with family, with school, with their environment, and so really
yeah,
trying to learn how to navigate that is astounding, and really how it builds a
mm,
personality. And so
yeah.
for you throughout, so did you go to school after Catholic school? What happened next?
So after Catholic school in university, and when I had a business degree.
Okay.
I have a business and an accounting and finance degree, because I felt like those were I could easily get a job,
Yeah.
and maybe I could easily pass. There's a term in the
Yeah.
transgender
Yeah.
community that you could just pass as a
Yeah.
cisgender woman.
Yeah.
So that was my initial thinking. Um, and I think sometimes in life I call it both luck and hard work, right?
Absolutely.
I knew I put in all of the work at university, and make sure I'm one of the top
Yeah.
students in school. And when I call luck, because back then, just historical, Accenture wasn't Accenture then; it was called Anderson Consulting,
Yeah.
and it for the very first time, the partners in the Philippines. That was back in 1997. So
Yeah.
like
Wow.
I'm on my 25th year in the firm
Yeah.
right now. The leaders were very visionary. There were two of them that I always admire, Beth Louie and Rita Cruz, which I always consider them to be my mentors.
Yeah.
They decided to go out of the capital city, just Manila, and to venture into my hometown, Cebu. Call it like Cebu is like the second
Yeah.
city in the
Yeah.
Philippines, and they wanted graduates from top universities in the city. So I was invited to come and join the meeting. Didn't know anything about consulting and information technology because I was ready to either go to the bank,
Yeah.
um, with my finance background, or go to an accounting department in one of the companies in the country. And so I went in. I was curious about it, um, and I think when I say luck, because I had an aha moment. I met this one of the partners, Rita Cruz. She was instrumental to get me jump started in my career. Sometimes there are people that you meet in your life that somehow course that path for you. And I think for me that was Rita. And it was a very memorable interview with her. And I always talk about that interview because 25 years ago, I knew that the corporate world or the IT world is
Yeah.
um, is not as open. And let's just be honest about that. There's not a lot of LGBTQ out in public people,
Yeah.
right? It's not such a thing, not just in IT, I think, but the corporate world in general. Um, but I think they were in the Accenture or Anderson Consulting, that was it at a point wherein they want to change things. They want to attract more people. They want to attract talent. So there were two key questions that I asked her.
Yeah.
One is, I actually asked her what the level of discrimination is in the company. I
Wow.
was very frank about that because
Yeah.
it's now or never for me. If I'm leaving my hometown to work in the capital city, I need to make sure that this company is going to hold me. So my first advice is for people that are starting their careers in any company, ask the difficult questions and see how the companies react, because that's a perspective, or that's a view of what the culture is in that company. Because for
Yeah.
me, everyone told me, looking back, I shouldn't have asked that question because that would have cost my job, right? Like
Yeah.
when I'm assuming that there's discrimination in the company, I just needed to know the level. But I mean, for me, I had nothing to lose, right? My support and
Yeah.
my identity was important then. So her answer actually struck me. I mean, she said, there's a level of how you present yourself before. There's a dress code, men and women.
Yeah.
But I think what really struck me was when she said the company is not looking at who you are, but it's more what your product is and what your output is and what you're contributing to the company. So that really was
Wow.
what struck me. And then the second Second, I said two things. So the second one is actually, she said, when you do good, if you stay here in the Philippines for a year, we'll actually send you to the US. And for me, that was like, this is my chance. This is
Yeah,
the moment of, growing up in a very small, city, small town, fishing village, I always call it, is my chance to see the world. So those were the two things that influence where I am right now. And I always credit my career with Rita Cruz. I just
yeah,
reached out to her 2 weeks ago to just check up on her. So
yeah, absolutely. And it really speaks to the personality and the people. Like when people are applying for jobs, I this is one of the things today we talk about, right?
yeah,
Look, you spend so much time looking for the right place, and a lot of times people are scared to ask the hard
mm,
question, and
mm,
then they end up living the hard question, which is
mm,
even tougher, right? And so this is
mm,
why we remind a lot of queer folks, it's like, look, bring your queerness to that interview process, bring who you are there, because if
yeah,
there's no red flags, that's actually the moment you want to find out about it, not
yeah.
when you get the job and you're on board and then you realize that, and then there's so much at stake that you have to go and backtrack. And so that's an amazing advice. And like looking at back in the 90s, tech is still very male dominated, and still,
That's
it's
true.
progressing. And
Yeah.
I've been working in it just for 10 years, and I've seen a huge
Yeah.
progression. And I'm curious, like, how did you see the tech industry progress, from the 90s through
From
the
when I
when
started,
when you
yeah.
started?
So
Yeah.
here's the thing. I know I was very confident transgender woman because of my family. I needed to do my work, and in that time, you're right, it was very male dominated. And it was a balance of how far can I take this?
Yeah.
And when I read the room, the company or the industry in general wasn't ready. So I actually went into the closet a bit. And
Yeah.
that's why I always say my story is I have two closets.
Yeah.
The first closet is people think I was this very feminine
Yeah.
gay guy,
Yeah.
but inside it is a transgender woman because I thought maybe the feminine gay is
Mhm.
could be a little more accepted. So I didn't hide that I was part of the LGBTQ community,
Yeah.
and now looking back now, Phil, I think that what I presented was I was queer.
Yeah.
There's that
Yeah.
word wasn't used before in my time.
Yeah.
It was just gay, lesbian,
Mhm.
male,
Yeah.
female, and I like how the way it's progressing right now because there's an understanding that the fluidity of identity.
Yeah.
So I hid my true self because I wanted to somehow just not to be the topic.
Yeah.
I want people to look at my output and not, the identity of who's delivering that output. And for years, that was my identity. But inside me, I've always thought I should at least influence the company,
Yeah.
right? I'm already inside. And I was waiting for I said, I'm going to do good. I'm going
Yeah.
to get myself into a very respectable position so that I can influence the culture. So as I went through my promotions and I became manager, I started talking to them about having an LGBTQ community, talking about that experience. And I think I could see the trajectory. It was a very hard start for sure. There needs to be a persistence. I mean, I could have just thrown the towel and said, "Okay, I'm done. This is not the industry for me." But I really like to be in IT. I really wanted to be part of the industry, so I stayed. But at the back of my mind, there's like a mission to if I could just move the needle, and
Yeah.
that's why I was working with organizations, setting up LGBT organizations in the offices that I'm part of. And so, in your question, it always is a hard start. The key
Yeah.
is to persist, and in that journey, you will always have haters. They exist.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they do exist. And
Yeah.
online right now, there's a lot of them, because it's just easy to do the hateful comments. And I've been through that. People have
Yeah.
are naysayers. So I think persistence is key.
Yeah.
Don't lose your eye on the prize, and
Absolutely.
and just continue to go through, because for every hater, if there's always one that is supportive, and focus on the people that understand and support. Which is, if you look at my mantra, that's always been how I grew up. I didn't care about the world. I
Yeah.
had this family unit that knows me. I had this family unit that loves and protect me, and that's the most important thing for me. So find those people that support you, and don't bother about the naysayers and haters. You have to have that kind of
Yeah.
attitude so that it's healthy for you and you can continue your cause.
Absolutely. And when you talk about this and forming these groups, I really think of community. And
Mm,
that's something, kind of, even growing up in Morocco and having also that double life. Like,
yeah,
you're kind of taking me back as you're telling the story. And I'm like, yeah, community was really important because
yeah,
you need that strength of that community to support you. And when, like, life is hard and no work and places where you work or you feel that, you want to go to that community to get that support and love and go back again to society and
yeah,
continue, um,
yeah.
either the work or the fight, and kind of move with that. So it's really great. And
Yeah, I think you're right about
yeah,
community. Now that I think about it, with what you're sharing with Morocco, I'm sure you had a very difficult childhood in a Muslim country, and it's still changing in terms of the view of homosexuality. That's why religion is a different topic. We can have another cafe on that one.
yeah.
But you're right. I think the reason why I was very keen on creating those organizations is because I wanted a family,
Yeah,
um, and um,
yeah,
and community was the family. So I couldn't bring my whole family with me every time I go to work in other countries. But yes, now that I like what you're saying, maybe that was one of the driver. I needed a place where I belong,
yeah.
and I had to create it first because it didn't exist before. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. And so throughout, so you got into Accenture over 25 years, and so you
yeah.
started as a consultant. And how was that career evolution for you? And how did you, your queerness, or being a trans person in tech, have impacted that career
Okay.
evolution?
So I started as a very geeky person. I was a geek. I started as a software programmer. I was doing system
Okay.
programs, and I loved it. I could use my brain. I could create systems, and I was financial services before, so I was helping create online banking,
Yeah,
and I loved that work. I was just happy to do my work, do quality work. My team leads were very happy with it.
yeah,
I became one of their trusted programmers, so they promoted me, and until I became a technical architect, and in the call it like I'm responsible for how the system
yeah,
integrates,
yeah,
and I would be responsible for many programmers. I started to show this leadership trait,
yeah,
and my queerness, I think, maybe because I wasn't I wasn't shy about the queerness.
yeah,
And people are always curious. They always ask questions. And what I always do is I educate, and I always say, well, you know what, at least you're curious.
yeah,
What I can do is, my lived experience. This is not one size fits all, but this is what a queer person is, in my own embodiment. So I think that queerness for me, I I made it feel normal, if
yeah,
there's a way to say that. I didn't want it to be very this novelty, it's like
yeah,
I'm just a normal person, and it's just I come in a queer package.
yeah,
So that for me was helpful for my teammates, especially when I became a lead, right? That openness, and I felt like because I was so open about myself, it somehow influenced how open the other people are too,
yeah,
right? People started talking about their
mhm,
family, their partners, their children, their wives, and I like that,
yeah,
because if you have a connection in the team that is beyond just a work related, and you can somehow connect on a human level,
yeah.
it's just a more connected team. So my
Absolutely.
experience as a lead is to always I want to be open so that the person is, open to me.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so,
And I love you saying that because you used your queerness as a strength, right?
mm,
Of your
mm,
personality, and it's really important. Also, another thing we talk with queer people because we grow up in this society that you're so ashamed, and society is always putting that weight on your queerness, and people feel ashamed from it, and it
mhm.
takes a long time for people to use it to their advantage and to use it as a strength, and what they learn right through that like resilience that they went through, and
Yeah.
use it to grow in their career. And I love hearing your story of being like, yeah, I choose to use it as a strength and move forward with it in my career.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Use it as a strength, not as a disadvantage, right? And then people gravitate to that. Now, I say that as if it's a matter of factly. Everyone have their own queerness journey.
Absolutely.
But I think it's key. Again, it's key to find the people that supports you. You
Yeah.
have to have a support group and anchor, whether it's family, friends, or or your partners.
Yeah.
Don't. I think the message is don't go through it alone
Yeah.
because it could be a very lonesome journey.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's a wonderful community. It comes back to community, and I think a lot of people don't think about the support the community can bring them, and they
Yeah,
think that they can do it alone. And some people do, but I tell a lot of our queer tech that I talk to, you're not alone. You have a community, and you can use it,
yeah,
and it's amazing the support you get if you voice
mhm,
it or just ask for it, right? And
yeah.
so and I love that. And so I want to touch something. So you studied in university accounting, finance, business, and then you're like, my first job was a software developer, and I was like,
I know.
whoa, okay, this is amazing. So how did you go from accounting to like software development?
That's a very good question. So, because I have the finance industry background, I
Yeah,
know how the finances work, debit, credit, and how a balance sheet and an income statement works. And so because I have an industry background, what I needed to do, which was I asked the company is I want to be a programmer.
yeah,
And what I needed to do is to top it off with the technical side.
yeah,
So what I did is I started university, I had my degree, happy about it. I think when I worked, I studied double
yeah.
because at night I'd be learning programming.
Learning.
The company was very supportive. They gave me all the books that's needed. There's no online before. I had to buy books from a bookstore and then just really read it through. And because I was enjoying learning, in my head I was said, "Oh, this is good because in university you pay to learn."
Yeah,
Now I'm learning and I get paid. I get the best deal. I'm doing what I love, which is to learn, and I get paid by it. So there's a lot of studying, self-studying in my call it first, second year, because I needed to learn how to program. That's one. And then I a self-study plus again a community, so community outside of the queer of the queer community, of the queer group, because I sought all the best programmers then, right?
yeah,
And like I know he's the best programmer, I know she's very good, and then I sought friendships and they became mentor because yeah, and then we would have fun. It's like after work or at lunchtime, and say, "Oh, I'm curious about how you would do the syntax." So I sought those people that are experts too, and so I think the first 2 years was just a sponge learning. So my finance background coupled with what I learned now in IT, I I sort of I was probably, and that's why probably the company likes sending me to clients because I know the industry and now I know the technical side. So I was both
yeah,
function, business, and technical.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are two key things that you mentioned that I think I've heard people who are successful in their career overall say. One, self-learning. It's really important to learn, identify, and
Yeah,
learn on your own. It's really important to dedicate that time. And
yeah,
also when you're learning, find a
mhm,
mentor and someone to support that learning. And those are two really important pillars for people who want to succeed. And
Yes.
in today's world, I think with the internet and everything that's available to us, it's amazing to have access to resources to do that. So
Yes.
learn, find mentors. It's really key to grow. And so I kind of really love hearing that progression and kind of how making it become a leader. And so throughout, as you become a leader and moved around with Accenture, um, did you feel that at any moment being a transgender woman in the tech industry, like have brought also some barriers or challenges in your career, and did you have to how did you solve them?
Oh yeah, that definitely. So when I said I was queer, people thought I was a feminine gay guy. Some people thought I'm a woman. It was
Yeah,
confusing. It was
yeah,
confusing for the people that don't know me in the company. And I've always had in me, I already built a name. I built credibility. Managers like my work. And in every country that I work with, I'm always like, maybe it's time to just open up the second closet
yeah,
and reveal the true self. It was challenging, because I'm always thinking about, as a consultant, you're working with clients.
yeah,
So I have so many questions in my head. Is this the right client? Is this the right country? Is it the right team? Is this the right boss? Is this so many questions? And I always have those questions every time I finish an assignment. In this
yeah,
journey, of constantly asking. I got tired one time and I'm like, okay, maybe just being queer is fine. Um, and it was only when I moved, so I think I spent 9 or 10 years in the US, 9 or 10 years in the UK, and I've always wanted to move to Canada. Canada
yeah,
was always, maybe that's the country, maybe that's home for me. I didn't find home in the cities that I work. It was mostly for a the work experience. And it was only when I moved to Canada where I felt like, okay, this is home and maybe it's the right time. So I moved here 9 years ago. And while in Canada, I had to, build my name too in the local office,
yeah,
do the work that I do. And one time now, Phil, because and maybe some of our queer people would think about this. Sometimes the hiding in the closet becomes so comfortable
yeah,
that you don't want to change those ways. Um, and and so 25 years in the firm, and I say I'm near retirement. Give another 5 or 10 years, learning and doing this work. Maybe it's not important to just come out as a transgender woman and just
you
my
keep it
queer
to
self
yourself.
is enough. I think my best friend from the UK actually pushed me and said, um, visibility matters because there's not a lot of transgender women in leadership positions, especially in IT. So that somehow I was like, okay, maybe this is just bigger than me moment, I think. But I've always thought maybe it's time to simplify too,
Yeah,
right? And not have all of these questions in your head. So I made that move. But the challenge, and you will see that the challenge is always the right timing.
yeah,
When that happens, I always say when that happens, I think just you will know yourself,
yeah,
embrace the moment. I saw people, in the Canada, I saw my lead, Jennifer Jackson was my lead, and I talked to her and told her about, this is who I am, what support can we do? And Accenture Canada has been very supportive. So
yeah.
it was always, makes me feel like it was always the right decision when I said I want to move to Canada. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You touch base on a really important point in that journey of coming out, right? And um, I still hear a lot of people, and I talk to people who still, not ready to come out of the workplace, and there's a lot of reasons why people still don't feel comfortable doing it. I
Mm.
understand it, but I always it's the question I think about. Is it you feel very comfortable in who you are, and so you don't want to make that next step, or is there a danger to really go
Yeah,
on? And
yeah,
it's tough. Sometimes maybe it's both, and it's tough to do that. One of the things that really inspired me for this conversation is so many times after this show we would get a message from someone that says, thank you for that conversation. I just come up to my colleagues. And this is
Oh,
when we talk about visibility.
mhm.
It's why it's important. And this is why each person is important to make that step, because the more visible we are, the more we make it normalize it,
Yes, yes,
right?
yeah.
And
Mhm,
make it easier for generations to come, to see role models. And this is one of
mhm.
the things that queer people and trans people don't have, is those the models that they can look up to. So thank you
Yeah,
for sharing that and telling us that. So
yeah.
I want to touch base, and time always fly from us, but I want to talk about consulting world, right? I think a lot of people, when they want to get into tech, they always think software developers. I'll go work at a tech company, work on a product, or I would do sales. Consulting is another career that people hear
Mhm,
about. So
yeah,
tell us a little bit, like you're a manager director at Accenture. You've been a
yeah,
consultant. How
yeah.
how what advice do you give to people who are looking to get a job in consulting?
In consulting, okay. So IT is broad, right? You could always just go to a company and be part of that IT department. Um, but the consulting is also a different career track in the IT umbrella, which is what we in Accenture do. So I always say, and to make it easy, because my mom always asks me, "What do you do?" So um, consulting is. Uh, you're always working with client. Number one, it's always client,
Yeah,
right? And there's always a problem to solve.
yeah,
So you're there to actually be the person to help the client.
yeah,
So there is a problem, there is a client, and if there's those two things, you look at it is how do you make it work?
yeah,
From those, I call it those two basic requirements, variables, call it in technical term. Then you need to look at there is a problem with this client. I'm coming in, I'm the third factor, I'm the one bringing in the solution. So if you look at that three-legged stool, then you double click and say, how do I make this work? Client is a human being. So
yeah.
that's a relationship angle. So there's a relationship management.
I love that. Yeah,
Problem is a technical issue. So there's functional and technical expertise. So this is where that when I say learn as much as you can comes in the picture.
yeah,
And then the third leg is you yourself. So
yeah,
you actually come in because you represent a company. So in my case, I represent Accenture. I bring in the Accenture. So there's always that I am a representative of the firm that can help your problem, but I want to make sure while I'm solving it, we build this relationship. Because if you don't have that relationship with that client, you can solve the problem. And if the client is not happy, then your work is not done.
yeah,
Right. And if you come in as a representation of a company, in my case, Accenture, and I don't bring my best self, then
yeah,
I fail to actually bring, the call it the best of the company.
yeah, yeah,
So I call that consulting. So when I tell my mom, if there's the problem, and like a doctor, there's a problem, you diagnose it and you provide a solution. It's just that in this case, it's a system problem,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
it's in the IT landscape problem.
This is the best explanation of what consulting is. I think a lot of people, you ask them and they go and tell you all these things, and it's so nice to be like, there are three components, and these are the three, and you work with client and relationship, you solve a problem, and you bring yourself. And I love that, because I think a lot of queer people, as they look to access the tech industry, there's
Mm,
just so many opportunities, and we tell them, like, look, you have to decide what is it you want, right? Do you want to work
mm,
for a big company or a small company? You want to work
yeah.
with a remote team or an in-person team? Do you want
Mm,
to work with clients, or you want to work on one product? Like, how these are questions. And I love that you're giving that explanation, because next time I'm going to tell, when people ask me about consulting, I'll be like, there is three component to it, and then work on that. And we have a question here. So kind of before we end, I'd love to hear a tip on or two for introverts. What advice does AJ have to help they in help people in community build in building their confidence?
Oh, interesting question. So I always tell people I'm an introvert. So, and
Yeah,
people don't believe that. So, and introverts for me are the best people because there's, and then looking back when I say, it's introspective.
yeah,
So when people say, oh, you're not an introvert, you're always in the camera. I think that this is where my advice comes in. Um, there's a little level of discomfort to bring yourself out,
yeah,
right? Um, but for me, when I meditate, I always ask, because not every situation I'm always upfront. There's some social gatherings that I also don't go. Is always ask this question, because an introvert, you're going into a very uncomfortable zone. So
yeah,
ask yourself these two questions. If I let up myself, would I learn something from this experience? Right? If there's a learning from, that's why I joined this conversation, because it's supporting the queer community. You have to understand what's in it for me. That's the first thing, because you're giving so much of your personality. Yeah. And the second question you need to ask is, will they be learning something from me? Yeah. So if you look at it, it's always the learning. In situations where it's like, okay, this probably doesn't have to have use my brain power or my personality, then don't, right? Not every situation you have to always be an extrovert, right?
yeah,
But not every situation you always have to hide in your introvert self. So there's a balance. If you ask those two questions as you're guiding, you either say, okay, I'm gonna extend
yeah.
and do a little bit and open up a bit, because I'm learning and they're going to learn something from me. I have something to say and they have something to say.
That, again, another great explanation of introverts. And we talk a lot about it because as a tech community and a queer community, a majority is introverts, and we talk a lot about how do we create space for people to
Yeah.
not feel drained coming to a queer tech event, coming to a meetup, interacting. How do we create content around that? And as I hear, I was like, I really love that, and I'll take a lot of that advice
Yeah.
to support the community. Um, it's 9:45, and we have to wrap up, but this has been a wonderful conversation, AG.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much
Thank you.
for joining us, sharing yourself with us, and inspiring so many queer people out there. It's been wonderful and amazing, and
I,
really excited and honored to have you on the show.
Thank you. And I'm learning from you too now, Phil. So it's heartwarming what you're doing. Thank you. Continue what queer tech is doing. You are in the middle. I call it, you're the bridge
Yeah,
between the industry and the community. And I
absolutely.
wish I had this group when I was growing up. Now that you have this and you've set up, I tell people, take advantage of it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's always a helping hand, and continue the good work.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today. And before we leave the show today, I want to thank our sponsors, RBC, for presenting this QT Connect live stream series. Thank you to Unity Technologies, Google Chrome, BDC, Moment Factory, Sun Life, and Oral Health and Acedia for supporting this series. And for those who are in Montreal, we are hosting our annual barbecue at Notman House on June 9th at 5:30 p.m. Feel free to come join us and connect with the community. And our next show is on July 7th. So until then, stay safe and looking to connect soon. Bye bye. Thank you.